So it's a Saturday. I'm starting on the ceiling layout now. Um, Mostly because my ceiling panels are hiding the 3/4 plywood on the table and I don't feel like moving them. So I'm going to do ceiling panels before I do at least get them cut so I can get to the 3/4 ply below them. But so I've struck a line here. I don't know if you could see the chalk line down the center. Might not be apparent here. You can see a faint hint of it, but struck a center line to measure from. The centerpiece is going to be 36 inches, and I'm going to start building runners to hold the thinner gauge plywood in place. What I'm doing right now is cutting 60 runners at 3 inches wide, and I'm going to kind of notch the ends so they kind of fit together, and each one can be screwed into each of the metal hat channels running on the roof. So need 60. There's 15 slots and each get 4. So actually later they'll each get 6. So I may actually need 90 of these, but for right now I'm doing it this way. I might ultimately just use some furring strips for the last edges, to be determined there. But for right now I am cutting 60 of these at about 3 inches wide each. So it's coming along here. I've got these stacks here already cut. These will work too. I just got to run them through the table saw, and then I'm continuing on with this sheet. I'll do the whole sheet. It might take another whole sheet to do as many runners as I need. So I've got these pieces inside. What I'm planning to do is use a table saw to strip them down to 3 inches in width. The ones that I haven't cut to 3 inches with the saw outside, I got some extra chunks here I can use. And then what I'm going to do is, at each of these spots, I'm going to bridge with about a 6-inch piece going this way, and I'm going to use 2 fasteners on it. And then I'll have the runners going this way, synced up so I can use wood screws to fasten them in place. And then the actual sanded plywood will go onto those runners on the edges. In this middle one, I'm going to put some middle cross bracing in once I understand how what dimension that needs to be. So after I get the runners, I'm going to get spray foam in a can and catch the edges, to fill in. That'll be after I put tubing in place for the wiring. I'm going to basically tape that in place, and then I may tack it down to the runners as well. But anyhow, that's the plan. I'm going to start cutting wood with the table saw here and making pieces to go both ways here on the roof, or on the ceiling. So at this point I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sets of runners and a bunch of blocks trimmed off. These are 28.75 inches center to center on the hat channels. So the plan is that I'm going to use sheet metal screws, hex head, to hold these in place going one direction, and then I'm going to use wood screws to put these in place following the length of the bus. After I have all the runners in place, and this is not all of them, this is about a little more than half of the runners, but once I have those in place, then I'll be able to put up the actual 3/8 plywood. And I've got to think about whether I want to use finishing nails for that with an air nailer, or, well, that's probably the best way. I'll probably use an air nailer and finishing nails. Maybe a few screws, one in the center and one at each end, to make sure they don't fall down. But I'm thinking finishing nails with the air nailer is probably the wise way to attach those to these pieces of plywood. And the tubing that's going to hold the lighting wiring will sort of flow under or through the space created by these blocks. So that's the plan. So I just put the first support block up. These screw holes look to be 6.5 inches apart. So I think I'll drill all the blocks ahead of time at my drill press at home. and then I'll be able to quickly put these up. So I'm using number 12 sheet metal hex head fasteners, and I'm pre-drilling at 3/16. So that widens these holes that are already factory slightly. And I need to find my bit. I had a bit for those heads. I just had to use the 1/4-inch ratchet for that. It was pretty hard overhead, so I definitely want to use my Milwaukee drill for the actual fastening. But this is the proof of the concept here with this first block, and it worked out good. So that's what's going on. I put the second block up. Now I'm going to attach this runner using 4 screws to those blocks. So that ought to be a pretty good hold. That's how the runners will go. So they'll follow that center line, and then the 36-inch piece going this way and the 18-inch piece going that way will both tack on this side to this runner. I'll be able to funnel the tubing in through that space for the electrical wiring. What I'll probably do is just take a piece of insulation and kind of wedge that tubing a little bit with the insulation so that it doesn't rattle and shake as much while we're driving, and maybe possibly tape it as I'm able to. So the idea is each light is going to have its own blue tubing. That's this tubing here, to act as a conduit. And the wire will blow right through there, push right through there. And everything's going to this side, to the passenger side rail at the top of the wall. And there'll be microcontrollers for the lighting mounted in the chase at the top of the wall, along with the LED uplighting, mood lighting. That'll run in those chases as well. So anyhow, that's what's going on. That's the method. I'll be doing a whole lot more of that for a while. So the video might be a little bit boring, or I might just wait to make a video for a while till I get further along in the sealing process. I've also marked on the ceiling here an F where the fans are going to go. What I'll do eventually is cut those from the roof down into the finished ceiling, so that the corners will be accurate when I drill through. And then what I'll do is just use a shaky tool or a jigsaw upside down to drill the actual 14-inch openings for those fans. So anyhow, I'm going to keep going with the runners, and it might be quite a process. So what I'm doing right now is I'm drilling a pilot hole on each side of a block here, 6.5 inches apart. This is my template block. I'm making pieces here to support the ceiling, and the screw holes that held the original ceiling panels in place are most often a few of them apart is about 6.5 inches, give or take a 1/16, which means that I can use the existing holes, widen them a little bit, and use number 12 screws much easier with this pre-drilling. So that's what I'm doing. So I have 97 of these cut out, so that'll be enough for 6 per hat channel, and that should allow for the ceiling runners to go in. Okay, so I'm making some progress with these blocks. I think since I'm in the area already, I'm going to screw some runners to these ones, and then I'll take those wires down and keep heading toward the back. Okay, so I got 10 sections of runner put up here in the front, in the middle, and I think that's where I'm going to quit for tonight. It went fairly quickly. Pre-drilling really did help quite a bit, so I recommend that, pre-drilling your blocks if you're going to use this method. So anyhow, I'll keep at it the next time I get out to the bus. Back at the bus here again on a Sunday. I'm going to continue with the ceiling. My brother and I were just troubleshooting a no-start situation here. We're not getting fuel. I replaced the fuel water separator. Turns out I think the transfer pump, which is the only part I didn't replace on the engine when I had it rebuilt, is probably shot. It doesn't run under 12 volts with a direct feed from the battery, so it's a pretty good indicator. So anyhow, I got to figure that out. Don't know if I'm going to do a original Cummins part or aftermarket, but anyway, it's a little mechanical troubleshooting. I need to move this thing so he can put a garage door on the workshop. So anyhow, I'm going to start putting ceiling pieces up from where I stopped here toward the back. Actually, it might work from the back to the front here, but that's what I'm doing. So I actually just kept working in the front instead of moving to the back so far. But I've got this half furred in. So I've just got to finish putting some rails up on this side. And then I'll have roughly half to 2/3 of the bus roughed in so that it can accept the plywood. After this step, once I've got all these in, I'm going to run the conduit and tack it in place for the lighting and the fan power. So I'm going to keep at it here. So at this point, I've got about half the bus equipped with the runners. And recall that there's a gap behind them for the lighting wires to pass through. And I'll use the flat surface to kind of tack those conduits in place. I've got little tiny hose, I guess you'd call them fasteners. I don't know what you'd call them, but they secure the conduit anyway. I sound like an idiot. I have little clamps to hold the tubing in place that I'm using as conduit for lighting and for the fans. So that's what I was trying to say. So I've got some blocks here on this side done in the back. Got three more rows here to do on this side, and then I'll switch to the other side. Yesterday I put the blocking in on this side over here. I'm hopeful that tonight I can get a good bit of the blocking done on this side and the back on up into here. So that's what I'm at, or what I'm up to. So moving pretty quickly here. I seem to be getting faster at this as I go. Kind of the story with the bus stuff. I've almost finished putting these blocks up. I've got 3 more to put right here. Then I can screw the runners in, but I think I have to cut those, and it's dark out, so I won't be finishing that today. And then over the overcap bunk, I need to screw more blocks in later. But this will let me mostly put the ceiling up. After I get the blocks and all these runners up, I'm going to be running the blue tubing that you see right there as the conduit for the puck lights and fans. And that was the last set of 3 blocks here in the main part of the bus. And now next time I'm out here, I can bring the runners all the way to the back. But I'm pooped for tonight. Okay, so my brother wants to put a garage door in the shop right there. We had to move the bus. I was having a problem with the fuel transfer pump, and the bus was a little bit stuck. So even after we got it running, which isn't permanent, I still have some kind of electrical issue, but we rigged it to get the engine started. Even after I got it started, the brakes were kind of seized up from having sat all winter, so we had to rock it a bit, and I ultimately used the tractor to give it a nudge out of these ruts. And that's about how far we got till we decided that we didn't want to turf the yard up much more. I've got the bus out of his way enough he can do his project, and I think I'm going to want to put at least a gravel pad, if not a cement pad, in here for this. Probably mostly gravel with some cement piers where the wheels would go. I don't know. Have to think about that, but clearly leaving it sit in the grass after a while is gonna sink it in good. So anyhow, we got it moved for his project, and hopefully I don't have to move it again for a while. And what do you think of my new driver's seat? That's pretty awesome, isn't it? I don't think I want to change that at all. We hit the road just like that. So this evening I got some stuff done on the greenhouse, but I'm also going to go over to the cutting table over here and cut the ceiling pieces. And I'm going to put supports up in the ceiling and take these pieces of 3/8 for the ceiling that I'm going to be cutting. I'll stack them inside the bus, and I'll build myself a little painting station inside the bus. I'd rather not paint in the pavilion. I don't want to drip paint on the blocks and make the pavilion look all messed up. So anyhow, that's what I'm going to get at. Okay, so I cut the first sheet of plywood, 3 foot on one piece and almost a foot on the other, minus the saw kerf basically. So one thing I've learned here is that it's a good thing the 1 foot piece got carved in a little bit, but the saw blade wandered a little bit on me off my guide. I'll be able to use this in a spot that won't be seen, but I think I'm going to cut multiple sheets at a time so that this is rigid. These are too flexible. What happened was it flexed and the saw blade kind of wandered off the guide a little bit. So anyhow, I'm going to get to cutting the next 4 sheets all at once. I'll just line them up and clamp them together. And then the other 5 sheets I'm going to also cut all at once. They'll each get 2 cuts. Okay, so this time I'm going to cut 4 sheets at once. These are lined up within a 1/16, so close enough. Got both sides here lined up. So I'm going to cut them all at once, and that way they won't bow in the middle as I'm cutting. So I have about half of the ceiling wood cut. I've stacked some of the 3 foot wide pieces here, some over there. I'll be setting up, like I said, a painting station inside the bus, but right now I'm going to cut the other half of the plywood. There's going to be 2 cuts at 18 inches and 1 cut at, well, that'll automatically create a cut at 12 inches. But you know, obviously the saw kerf is the difference, but I'm going to get those cut. So I've finished cutting the ceiling panels out of the 3/8 plywood. I've got 5 of these on one side, 5 of these on the other side. These are 12-inch pieces. And here's a stack of 10 18-inch pieces for each side, 5 per side. Got 3 of the sheets at 3 foot wide here, another 2 right here. So at this point I've got the wood cut for the ceiling. I just need to finish these ceiling supports, and then I can prime this plywood. It's AC, so one side's sanded. I've got to prime that and get it painted, and then we'll be able to put this up. I think what I'm going to do is maybe do it in batches of 1/3 to half of the plywood and get it mounted after painting it. That way I don't have too much of the bus covered in plywood at any one time trying to dry it. The other thing I could do is use little cubes of wood like when I painted the metal. At least on the primer step, I could probably use little cubes of wood and just stack this as I paint it, but that would leave little marks that would need sanded. I got to think about it. It's a lot of painting.